If I tell my wife, if you don't love me, I'm going to set you on fire, am I a loving, good husband?
If you set her on fire, then you never loved her to begin with.
And if God sends us to hell, he never loved us to begin with.
Wrong.
Okay.
Wow, over 500,000 people thought that was a clever takedown. It wasn't, and here's why. The atheist in this video is attempting to make an argument from analogy. That's when you point to similarities between two things to argue that what's true of one thing must also be true of the other. In this case, if the husband says to his wife, "Love me or I'll set you on fire," we should all agree he's unloving. So if God says, "Love me or go to hell," we should all agree he must be unloving too. You see how this works? It sounds powerful, but it fails badly. Why? Because for an argument from analogy to work, the similarities must be significant and the differences must be superficial. However, if there are significant differences, then it's a false analogy and the whole argument falls apart. And that's exactly what happens here. Let me show you. First, the relationship between a husband and a wife is not like the relationship between God and humanity. God isn't merely a loving father, he's also a holy judge. And as a judge, he must judge lawbreakers. That's a problem because we have broken God's moral law. We call that the bad news. But here's the good news. God isn't merely a judge, he's also a rescuer. This leads to the next big difference. Second, the husband's threat, "Love me or I'll set you on fire," is nothing like God's offer of salvation. God never says, "Love me or pay the price." Rather, he says, "I'll pay the price to show you my love." Romans 5:8 says, God shows his love towards us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now you can accept the rescue or reject it. That's up to you. But don't blame the rescuer when you reject the rescue and receive the judgment that your sin deserves. Third, the atheist analogy involves coercion. Love me or else. But God doesn't coerce love. He offers it freely, but allows people, like this atheist, to reject it. We see this in the heart of Jesus as he laments over Jerusalem. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I would have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing." This is not the voice of an abusive tyrant. It's the cry of a rejected savior. Oh, one more thing. God isn't setting people on fire. Yes, Jesus talks about eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels, but that's metaphorical language for judgment. You can't burn immaterial spiritual beings like angels in literal flames. Also, how could hell be outer darkness if it's full of flames? Literal fire gives off light. So God isn't setting people on fire as this analogy suggests. For these reasons, this is a false analogy and a bad argument. God isn't an insecure husband demanding affection through an abusive ultimatum. No, he's a holy judge offering a gracious rescue to rebels who can freely reject it.